11 signs that you are being used. How can you tell if you are being used? In this video, we will talk about how to understand it. For example, your friendship is not really a friendship, or your relationships are not a two-way process, but a one-sided game. In this video, we will talk about those moments when you are being used, but you don't realize it. And first, the give and take balance is disrupted. When you realize that you, for example, invest more in a friendship or in relationships, meaning you give a lot, but receive almost nothing in return. When you are asked for help and you are ready to come to the rescue, you are ready to do something. But when you need help, it's a process of solve your problems on your own. So, if you recognize yourself in this, it's a red flag. The feeling of one-sided relationships, when you realize that if something happens to you, no one will come to your aid. But when something happens to someone close to you, you rush to help. You are ready to support. You are ready to listen. You are ready to solve, perhaps some problems, but on a subconscious level. You understand that if something similar happens to you, you will not be supported. No one will come to your aid, and you take more steps towards them. That is, it might be some kind of argument, conflict, maybe a problem in the family, or possibly in a friendship. And you realize that every time you are the one who makes the effort, every time you are the one who solves a difficulty, every time you take responsibility for the relationships and the friendship. So, this is the first red flag indicating that your relationships are, in fact, a one-sided process. Furthermore, you are constantly being asked for favors with phrases like, "Help me out again. It's not hard for you. You do it so well. Better than I do. Do it for me." Again, it's not difficult for you. And you repeatedly put aside your own needs, tasks, and difficulties to help. Because at that moment, when they ask you and say it's not hard for you, they're also devaluing the contribution you make. So, they ask, you do it, but it is already devalued. This is exactly how a manipulator behaves, and a person, often doing something, expects some gratitude, expects confirmation of their own value, but they never receive it. You find yourself thinking that you cannot say no, and often, it is people who have not learned to say no who fall for the tricks of manipulators. These are the children of strict parents, where the children were not allowed to say no to their parents, and now these children grow up and cannot say no to requests. Such people often fall for the tricks of manipulators. If you realize that you don't want to do something, but you can't say no because you feel guilty, afraid that people will reject you, or that you're a bad person, and so on. These are your problems that need to be worked on, but you don't need to. Be afraid of the word no. You can help when you genuinely want to and when you have the resources, meaning when you have the energy to do it, and the desire to help. If you realize that you yourself have no resources, no strength, perhaps a bunch of problems have already piled up on you, but you cannot say no, then you need to work on yourself. Understand what feelings the word no evokes in you. Feelings of guilt, feelings that you will be abandoned, feelings that you will suddenly be called ungrateful, and so on. And these feelings need to be addressed in order to build healthy, harmonious relationships with others. Next, guilt. This is what I started talking about. As soon as you realize that in your communication, in friendship, in relationships, you start feeling guilty, when you begin to think that you are bad if you don't do something, then you need to work on yourself, not rush to help someone else. You need to help yourself first. It is evident that the person has some kind of trauma, an internal issue, where they do not know how to establish personal boundaries and do not understand that they can refuse where they do not want to. And it doesn't mean that if I don't have the resources to help someone and I refuse, it doesn't mean that I'm bad. It only means that I can't help right now. So, if you recognize yourself in this, it means you need to work on yourself. And if you realize that you constantly feel guilty when communicating with a person, it means there is a manipulator nearby. Furthermore, behavior changes before and after help. How does a manipulator act? For example, they need something from you, and they become so sweet, kind, and wonderful, like a perfect friend, girlfriend, or partner. But as soon as you help them, their behavior changes drastically. So, you fulfilled one of their needs, and now they can either continue to communicate with you or not communicate at all, essentially pushing you away. So, if you notice these fluctuations, it means that you are simply being used and that there is a manipulator nearby, indicating that your relationship is a one-sided process. Furthermore, your help is taken for granted. Initially, they might ask for your help and be grateful, but the more you respond to requests and do things for the person, the more it starts to seem like it's just expected. The more you can't refuse in situations and, for example, you don't like it, you feel bad about it, but you can't. Break free from it. Next, you catch yourself thinking that you are trying to please in everything. As soon as you realize that you are trying to appease the person next to you, to please them so they don't get angry, don't freak out, don't get upset, so that things aren't difficult for them, and so on. Know that you are simply being used in these relationships. Relationships, I repeat, are not a one-sided process. This applies to friendship, this applies to family, this applies to communication with relatives. If you help someone, you can expect mutual help. If you do something for another person, you can expect them to do something for you. But if you realize that you are already completely and fully investing in another person's life and catch yourself thinking that you are pleasing them like a small child to a parent, just to keep them from getting angry, to make sure everything is good for them, and so on, then you are under the influence of a manipulator. Moving on. A person encourages behavior that benefits them, even if it harms you. Well, for example, you don't like your job, it's hard and difficult for you, and you feel drained, realizing that it's not the right place for you. You share this with your family, and they respond. Well, you are so great, you can handle everything, you earn so well there, it doesn't matter that it's hard and bad for you, you are so strong, you can handle it all. And then they instill the idea that your feelings and emotions are nothing, that they are insignificant. The main thing is that you work, for example, and bring money into the family, and the rest is not really important. You'll manage somehow and so on. That is, this can apply to any kind of relationship. So, if you are not valued in these relationships, it means you are simply being used at certain moments. Moving on. It's hard for you to make a reciprocal request, and you might hear phrases like, "You're so selfless," but my girlfriend Sasha, for example, is so selfish. Meaning, you always help me and never ask for anything in return. It seems pleasant to hear, but it's just ordinary manipulation. A person, hearing such a phrase, understands that they can no longer ask another person for help if they need it. In other words, the idea is formed that you must give, but you cannot take anything in return. So, if you hear phrases like these, it's once again the action of a manipulator. A man who calls his woman selfish simply doesn't want to buy her anything, for example. Or, for example, when talking about your friend, saying that his wife is so greedy, asking for this and that, and emphasizing your selflessness, it only tells you that you should never ask your husband for anything. This is the action of a manipulator. If you give something in a relationship, in friendship, in family, it means you can expect something in return, you can ask for something, you can receive something in return. But if you are not getting anything in return, then it is a one-sided process, and there is a manipulator acting somewhere nearby. Furthermore, you feel drained, and this serves as proof that you are interacting with an abuser or manipulator. Because when you are in a relationship and there is a balance of give and take, you give something and receive something in return, you do not feel drained. But when I give a lot. Without replenishing, at some point the resource will run out, there will be nothing left to give. If there is nothing, what can you give? Nothing. So, if you often feel drained, especially if this exhaustion happens with a certain person, meaning you feel like they are depleting you, then this could indicate that they are using you. And the final threat of breaking up, blackmail, guilt tripping, the end of a friendship or family relationships. When a manipulator realizes that what used to work on you no longer does, they start using different methods to bring everything back to the way it was. Well, she used to be convenient and did everything I wanted, but now she has become inconvenient. That is, she also does what she wants. So what does that mean? It means it's possible. Resort to blackmail, various manipulations, threats of breaking up, guilt tripping, implying that you are now bad and not doing what makes me feel good. And if you have worked through your guilt, it means you won't react to it. You will understand that you don't have to do everything that others demand of you. You owe more to yourself, and you should do what feels right for you. And from this state of abundance, create your own. Space, a happy space, rather than a state of deficits. Where demands are made of you, you give, and you are already exhausted and depleted. You harm yourself and naturally won't make anyone around you happy. That's all for this video. Elisa Vardomskaya here. I hope for your likes and subscriptions. Write in the comments what you would like to discuss in my new videos. Don't forget to hit the bell. Goodbye, everyone.